I share Sinister's apparent affection for Dante's Inferno, I must ask how he's exerting this much power over our perceptions of reality.
No, this is the clone. Roberto, look out!
Beware the Jabberwock, my son!
When most companies try to bank on nostalgia by reviving an IP, there's always a chance that it could be a hit or a miss. Usually most revivals, remakes, and reboots never live up to the original. But there's that occasion when it not only lives up to the expectation, but also reminds you how great the original material was. So when I learned that Marvel Animation was bringing back the classic 1992 X-Men anime series as a continuation series, I was very skeptical due to the mishandling of the MCU films and shows as of late. With this series being a revival of the original series, a lot was riding on it to deliver. To many, X-Men 92 is considered one of the greatest anime series of the 90s. So, question here is, does X-Men 97 live up to the original series? And is it worthy of being mentioned in the same way as the original series? Also, does it respect the source material? Let's answer these questions.
Storm, watch Magneto and the judges. The rest of us will back up the guards in the lobby. Our goal is de-escalation.
Upon viewing X-Men 97 for the first time, you instantly see what the team behind the series was going for. This starts with the intro itself. It blurs the thin line between being exactly like the original intro to the 1992 series and something entirely different. It gives those who watch the original series a sense of nostalgia. It's a detail most creators neglect when reviving or remaking an IP. The amount of care put into the intro alone showed how much they wanted to bring views back to a time when they viewed the original series. They presumed many had watched the original series. This was the right move in my book. Even if that wasn't the case, the original intro is one of the greatest intros to an anime series. So it's a win-win situation no matter how you slice it. This level of detail also extended to the opening recap. The team behind the series and Bo DeMayo, the showrunner, wanted to make sure that they are watching a new episode of the original series. But of course, X-Men 97 is much more than the presentation. The premiere episode literally begins after the last episode of the original series, with the team trying to come to terms with Professor X being gone. The premiere episode is where the viewer begins to see the subtle changes to the characters, particularly with Rogue, Magneto, and Jean Grey. This also extends to the voiceovers as well. Many of the original voice cast returned to reprise their roles, such as George Buza as Beast, Alison Seeley Smith as Storm, Lenore Zan as Rogue, and of course, Cal Dodd as the iconic voice of Wolverine. There are also new actors that replaced the old ones, such as Ray Chase, now voicing Cyclops instead of Norm Spencer, and Jennifer Hale now voices Jean Grey instead of Catherine Disher. The changes are only noticeable if you recently viewed the series. Otherwise, the voice acting is top-notch. It was good to hear some of these iconic voices again, but it was evidently clear that the vocal performances weren't a one-to-one match to the original series, especially when it came to Rogue and Wolverine. I can presume this was due to the vocal cords of the voice actors themselves aging. It was still jarring to hear Rogue sound like a much older woman. I commend the creators for bringing back the original cast, but if you ever plan to watch the original series alongside X-Men 97, just consider that. Speaking of new, we are introduced to a new character in the series, Sunspot, being saved by the X-Men from the Friends of Humanity. This scene showcases the upgrade in the action scenes compared to the original series. From Cyclops using his optic blast in very creative ways to Storm crashing through the roof with her powers raging twice in back-to-back episodes, the team behind the series show viewers that they are not watching a Saturday morning cartoon series. Instead, they are viewing a version of that made for those who grew up watching the original series, presented with a more adult vision. Speaking of that, this is also structured into the storytelling as well. In the premiere episode, the X-Men are out in action for the first time, but it doesn't last long because apparently Professor X chose his successor to lead the X-Men. That being Magneto. Yes, the very same man they fought on many occasions over the course of the original series, and of course the comic books, over the conflicting ideals on mutant kind. We see that Magneto, despite being indifferent to mutant kind, has to set aside his agenda to honor his best friend's wishes and carry on his mission. This is a very realistic situation presented in an anime series like this. This is something that would have been more in line with the comics. Magneto's role as a leader changes him as a person, and the way the writers handled him taking up the mantle upon Professor X's departure is done in a way that makes logical sense. We know Magneto isn't truly a villain per se, but more of a man trying to save his own kind from persecution. But unfortunately, he's no Professor X and does things drastically differently. Whereas I liked this aspect and the role he takes on, there's another aspect that I wasn't particularly fond of. More on this shortly. The series does a great job of bringing the viewer up to speed on what's been going on since the original series was last seen. With Professor X out of the picture, the Senate brokered a deal that allows mutants to have the same rights as humans, and Genosha officially becomes a nation. This is something that Professor X always strived for, a place where mutants are accepted, but as with all races, you have those that are unaccepting of others. This is seen in episode 2, when the Friends of Humanity crash in UN hearing alongside the Executioner and shoot Storm with a mutant powers suppression rifle. This of course angers Magneto to a point where he lifts the entire Senate bench into the sky in a really cool scene. This showcases how far Magneto has come as a person after Professor X's absence. The old Magneto wouldn't have shown his enemies any form of mercy, but here he does. It deepens the character's resolve to make amends for the past crimes he has committed. As I watch more into the series, the story unravels with good progression, especially at the end of the same episode where Jean Grey shows up at their doorstep. This moment shows how much they have delved into the lore for the revival. Finding out that the Jean Grey we knew is the Goblin Queen herself, Madeline Pryor, was unexpected but made sense considering this is tied to an episode of the original series. That level of detail is rare to see in the anime series these days. This could have easily been forgotten in the grand scheme of things, but it wasn't. Speaking of that, we see the return of Mr. Sinister, and X-Men must go into action to save baby Nathan. This episode was very colorful. Another thing to note was the score itself, done by the Newton brothers. I never heard anything like this in animation. It is very tense and techno-like. I was watching it with the speakers blaring, and it just booms through the speakers. The entire scene in Inferno was a prime example of that. The music matches the chaos going on perfectly. It truly gives the series a whole different vibe, and its implementation in the scene is what makes it even greater. What's even better is the animation itself. It's the series' biggest strength. It's so fluid from scene to scene. This is hands down one of the best hand-drawn anime series in animation today. The only series beating it is Invincible. Scenes consistently exhibit loud, expressive colors and effects, particularly Storm's weather powers and Jubilee's sparks. The kicker is that it maintains the same level of quality throughout the entire season, considering that the animation duties were mostly handled by Studio Mir, the South Korean studio known for its prowess in animation, having worked on The Legend of Korra, all the way up to the recent Devil May Cry anime series and DC's My Adventures with Superman. But the work they deliver here looks completely different from what they are known for. But their prowess is still intact, and it shows completely. They managed to keep every episode looking consistently great. Kudos to the studio for the level of effort shown here. As much as I like the setup in episode 3, episode 5 is where the season takes a drastic turn for me. I had mentioned previously that there was another aspect of Magneto that I wasn't particularly fond of. Let's clear that elephant in the room, the romantic budding affair between him and Rogue. Frankly, I was not a fan of it for many reasons. First off, it just felt weird considering two things. First of all, it was never alluded to at any time in the original series. Second, it just felt tacked on into the story without rhyme or reason. The setup was vague, and when we do get an explanation for it happening, it lacks any cohesion to what happened to the original series. I can't understand if it was in the comics, but I'm judging this based on what was established in the original series. Their interactions were short and never alluded to anything like that. Added on top of that, it comes at the expense of Gambit. The dynamic between him and Rogue was always one of the aspects of the original series that resonated with me and many fans. Even in the comics, Rogue and Gambit were always the ones readers loved seeing longing for each other. Here in X-Men 97, all of that is thrown out of the window. Like, she lays it heavy on Gambit, dumps him, and feigns like she feels sorry for him. But in the next scene, she and Magneto are suspended in the air, lip-locking at a gala in a room full of guests, while Gambit watches. To add insult to injury, he ends up getting killed when the Sentinels attack Genosha. And guess who is the one holding him after he dies? Not hard to figure out. Rogue is treated as a wishy-washy character this entire season. I just loathed the entire thing, and it was very off-putting. Her character holds the least weight in the entire season, and it failed to elicit any sense of sympathy for her. I believe that the same turn of events could have happened without sacrificing Gambit and making Rogue into what she's portrayed in this revival. It was just so egregious. In episode 6, we learn who was behind the attack on Genosha. Bastion, the human sentinel hybrid who goes around implanting several humans with nanos to become human sentinels themselves. Even though the setup for Bastion's role in the latter half of the season lacked any kind of shock factor, his origin was well told, and you get a clear motive shown to the viewer. The latter half of the season is where the action culminates into what I consider one of the best action sequences of any Marvel animated series to date. The series pulls from the 1980s and 90s run of the X-Men comics, as we see various cameos such as Forge. Yes, I liked him and Storm as an item. But you see other characters from the Marvel Universe, such as Spider-Man, Captain America, Iron Man, Doctor Strange, Doctor Doom, Daredevil, and with Morph being a vehicle to introduce more cameos. This was a great way to establish that they exist in the same world as the entire Marvel Comics gallery of characters. It was great seeing Easter eggs such as the X-Men Sega Genesis cartridge and the cover of X-Men issue 30. This is a love letter to the history of the X-Men and shows us how much care and detail went into this series. The team behind the series really dove into the lore and pleases many, including a very amazing friend of mine who is a die-hard fan of X-Men himself. Heck, when you are recreating the X-Men arcade in your anime series, that's a pretty huge indication that this is being taken very seriously.
And so you have chosen your side.
Oh, good. We're skipping the blabber.
Let's get this straight once and for all. X-Men 97 is possibly the best revival of an IP I have seen in the last few years watching animation. It's a series that aimed to continue what made the original series memorable and proceeded grandly. Nothing about this series reeks of being a cash grab. It's a series crafted by people who clearly love X-Men and its lore. Seeing details such as the X-Men donning their classic 80s costumes from the comics, the well-placed cameos that emphasize the history of Marvel Comics itself, and bringing obscure stories from the comics such as Inferno, The Trial of Magneto, and the Professor X and Lilandra arcs made me appreciate this series even more. It made it worth watching even if you were a fan or not. But being a fan of X-Men is rewarded upon viewing it. I also loved Storm going through her redemption arc. It was refreshing to see her in this fashion, as she was never seen as someone so powerless in the original series. It was great seeing her restructure herself into the woman she has always been. Even though there was some rough spots, such as the aforementioned Rogue, Gambit, and Magneto love triangle, a bland Jubilee story, and not truly grasping why he would let Magneto lead the X-Men instead of Cyclops, which was more jarring given Professor X's explanation why. X-Men 97 was worth waiting years for and watching. I will say it right here. This is the best thing Marvel Animation will ever produce. And from the way Season 2 is looking, it seems that things are about to get even more interesting.
To do what is necessary. You are a traitor to your race.
Been in a lot of wars, bub. The brave always die first.